Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. My name is Dadisi Najib. I'm the Public Works Hearing Officer this evening, and Cerise Waiters is our clerk. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. This is a virtual hearing. There is no sign-in sheet. So if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider 4 items tonight. Hearing order number 210853 to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1939 Market Street. Hearing order 210854 to consider the removal of 7 street trees with replacement of 3 street trees. In lieu fees, appraised value will be collected for the loss of 4 trees without replacement adjacent to 700 Golden Gate Avenue. And the staff approved the removals and the public has protested. Next up is hearing order number 210855 to consider the removal of 1 street tree without replacement. No in lieu of the tree is adjacent to 3625 Balboa Street. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. And lastly, hearing order number 210856 to consider the removal of 1 street tree without replacement adjacent to 42 Clipper Street. Staff denied the removal and the applicant has appealed. My job as the hearing officer this evening is to gather the facts for the hearing items, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making my decision today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determination. And once the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you if you have provided your contact information. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. First, I will ask the Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There's no time limit for our presentation. And then each speaker will allow the property owner or appellant or applicant to speak, and then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak next will do so. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. As I shared, the clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. And if you'd like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak, and then you'll have the allotted 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments. Then use the Zoom's raise your hand feature if you're on a computer to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you're dialing in on your phone, you'll dial *9 to indicate that you're raising your hand. When it's your turn to speak, I'll recognize you. And if you're on your phone and you're muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. Once all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, We'll now begin the hearing. Public Works representative, is that Miss Susan?
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. I'll wait till after item number 2, the public comment.
Okay. So we're ready to start the first hearing order 210853.
Yeah, did we do item 2, the public comment for matters not on today's agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. My apologies. Yes.
I'll do it at the end.
Yes. Thank you, Susan. So sometimes if there anyone who's on this call that's a member of the public that has a comment that they want to address that is not on today's agenda, Please speak. Please identify yourself. So if anyone is on this call that wants to address our department on matters that are within our department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda, that's the
Hello.
public comment number 2. Yes.
Hi, my name is John Nolte. I'm calling in regard to item number 3 and also on item number that's also on same item is on September 4th, 2024, order number 4210818 for 3 trees at 1939 Market Street. So you have this posted at 2 different agendas next week and today. So I want clarification on that. So because there are 2 different orders, which one is being heard, which one is going to be heard today? And is it the other note that you have to clear? You have to fix both are online currently today. Okay. And then my next issue is that I request that no rebuttals done after people speak, because it's not fair, because not everybody gets to speak twice, and that's not fair to the people to have rebuttals on people on any public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Is there anyone else that wants to address any items that are not on today's agenda?
This is Josh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just in terms of public comment relevant to this hearing, but not items on the agenda specifically, I just want to point out that according to our 2023 San Francisco Urban Forestry Report, the city now has a 1,236 street tree deficit compared to the January 2017 street tree census. So in the last 6 years, we have not net gained a single tree. Instead, we've lost over 1,200. And we're not dozens or hundreds of trees off of the tree planting goals set forth in the Climate Action Plan. We're thousands of trees off of that goal. We're not missing our climate action goal by a little bit. We're not even in the same universe as our climate action plan when it comes to our street trees. And this climate action plan was created in response to the city's 2019 declaration that the city is in a climate emergency. So the goals set out in that plan, they're not nice to haves, they're need to haves. We already live in a city that has the smallest tree canopy of any major city in the United States. So when we talk about removal, we need to understand the context in which this exists. It's not just a tree here or there, it's cumulative. And cumulatively, we are failing our city trees. And simply saying we'll replace them or we'll pay in lieu fee, that's a failure too, because the city's climate action plan doesn't call for one-for-one replacement. It said that by 2023, which was last year, every department in this city needs to have a policy that calls for a basal area tree replacement formula. That means if you take out a tree that's 10 inches in diameter, you plant 5 trees that are 2 inches in diameter. Replacing one-to-one isn't a win, that's a fail. And finally, in lieu fees that are supposed to cover the cost of replacement, the department knows they don't. And what's more, the city's delayed replacement list is now hundreds of trees in arrears with no end in sight, because to put it simply, the city lacks the personnel and the equipment and the resources to plant all these so-called replacement trees. So with that in mind, I encourage the hearing officer, the department, and all here tonight to consider this context as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment on item that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Public Works, are you ready to make your presentation for this first item on our, not on our agenda, but our first order number of tonight?
Yeah.
That always confuses me. Thank you so much.
And I'll answer Mr. Nolte's question about 1939 Market. And I apologize because at the last minute, they said they couldn't attend this hearing. So we had a very short deadline to issue for the next hearing of September 4th. So it was just made sense to just, as we were prepping the September 4th hearings, to ask them if they wanted to do that hearing, and they said they could. So we'll, so Ms. Najib is not going to be issuing a decision on that one. And you're welcome to send your comments or attend that hearing on September 4th. Okay, so just a quick overview. We always say this, our first goal is to ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure in the public right of way. So this kind of sits on the fence of we're trying to preserve and grow the urban forest, but we're also balancing the needs of a growing and evolving city. And then in 2016, a ballot measure passed that transferred the responsibility for maintaining street trees from repairing tree-related sidewalk damage from property owners to the city, and this also included tree pruning. And so it created a $19 million annual set aside for this from the city's general fund for street tree SF. We had a census that inventoried 125,000 street trees. Sorry about that. So I think this pruning grid map is a little bit old. We're more than 2/3 along with this street tree pruning. And that includes tree removal as well. We try to only remove when it's a city-related removal. We try to only remove trees that are dead, declining, a structural hazard. And then, in case there's any question about it, our tree ordinance establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide variety of issues regarding trees, and it's codified under Article 16 of the Public Works Code. And then we always emphasize this because people always ask when our ordinance changed about 2.5 years ago. We, as Mr. Clip mentioned in his open public comment, tree replacement is required within 120 days. And if it can't be replaced within 120 days, it's added to a delayed replacement tree report. And we have to track if it can't be replaced in a nearby location. We created an action called relocate replacement, so we can run a report for those. If a property owner or applicant is granted a removal permit for the removal of a healthy tree, the department shall require a replacement street tree of equivalent value to the one removed or impose an in lieu fee. The owner can pay the difference between the appraised value of the subject tree minus the value of the replacement tree. That's how we approximate the equivalent value and get a replacement tree. So again, like these are not set in stone here, but we have some general removal criteria. If they're dead, like I said, for our street tree removal process internally, they must be dead or dying in decline, structural hazard. And then we have some cases in construction where if a tree is like small and can be replaced in kind, we may approve it for removal. We don't have to, but we may. And in some cases where the construction is extremely extensive and we think that the tree will be destabilized and we don't see another way around the logistics from the construction, we may approve it if it's shown that there absolutely is no other workaround. But we can appraise the value for the loss of the tree. So yeah, our first case was postponed. It was a denial of 3 large street trees. We didn't prepare the presentation for this case because we postponed it. But if you want to comment, want more information, feel free to email urbanforestry@sfdpw.org if you want to be invited to that hearing. We don't want to we don't want you to, have come here for this hearing and not have a chance to speak, and we'll collect your comments for the next hearing officer. But a decision on this case is not going to be made for this round by the current hearing officer. So I guess we can allow if there's any comment for this case, but we're not going to make a presentation. Okay. Any comments?
I see no hands at this time.
Great, thanks. Again, we're willing to explain the project if you email us.
And to
So-
be clear, this is for 210853, correct?
Oh, correct, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
great.
we didn't put the
Thank you.
order numbers on this presentation. A little sloppy.
That's okay, just wanted to make sure.
Mhm. And so then we'll move on to the next case.
Okay, so next up, the hearing order number 210854 to consider the removal of 7 street trees with replacement of 3 street trees in lieu of fees.
Mhm.
Appraised value will be collected for the loss of 4 trees without replacement adjacent to 700 Golden Gate Avenue. Ms. Newberry, would you care to make your presentation?
Sure. Yeah, so we
Thank you.
approved the removal and the public protested. It's a little complicated. There's actually 2 lots. So we will be assessing the street tree requirements separately per lot. Well, they will be divided into 2 lots, but they applied for the removal as one. Like we assessed see how there's 2 permit numbers here, ending in 212 and 213. So we assessed 2 permit applications because there's technically 2 lots, and we are going to do the assessments separately, but it's all one development, which is why we're holding one hearing. So the first phase is 750 Golden Gate, and for that phase there are 15 trees required in total. For the construction that triggers our code, section 806D, which requires 1 tree for every 20 feet. There are 6 trees on the lot, and 1 tree is dead, and the other 5 trees are being proposed for removal, and they were in fair to poor condition, so we approved them. And in this case, they're only going to be able to replace 2 of the trees of the 6 that are present on this lot. So we're going to be assessing 13 in lieu fees at the end of the project. And then the other tree, which totals 7, is on the other building lot, and they'll have that has a 16 tree requirement. There's 8 trees now, and they can replace the 1 tree, so they'll owe 8 in lieu fees at the end of the project. So the reason for removal of the trees on 750 Golden Gate, the trenching is going to destabilize the existing trees, and we usually work to see if they can move the trenches or if there's any feasible workaround. So this is just not the easiest to read schematic, but it points to the street trees on the bottom that are being proposed for removal, and where the trenching is going here. Let's see. The trenching here, right behind the trees, that line. That's an indicator for the utility. And then this is the replacement plan. So yeah, it is only 2 trees with permeable pavers here, which will be helpful for establishing larger trees. They're less concrete, more permeable surfaces help establish larger trees. And then there's a little bit of a close-up. So this is that tree 3 there is on a different lot, and it's going to be done in the second phase. So this is the dead tree we approved, and it's on Elm Street. That can't be replaced because it's on a 6-foot sidewalk, and our code just does not allow for replacements on 6-foot sidewalks. The reason is because if you look at the size of the tree canopy, the drip line of the tree goes all the way out here. And so if you think about a tree that has only the growing space of a 6-foot sidewalk, and it uplifts the sidewalk here, you're basically root pruning incredibly close to the base of the tree if you do have to repair the sidewalk. And it also causes a lot of path of travel issues. You're going to have the most uplift where you have the largest structural roots near the base of the tree. So it's just not sustainable to have a large stature tree in these narrow sidewalks. So unfortunately, we couldn't approve the replacement here. And then this is tree 4 on 700 Golden Gate, the other tree approved. So this was like, in our opinion, the best tree of the ones being applied for removal, and it's like it's missing like its entire interior canopy here. So basically all the growth is just like the new like shoot tips basically, and that creates really poor structure. So you have these bare branches here, and then you have these little tufts. So it's really hard for trees to put on a lot of wood and good structure, good unions when you have barely any canopy supporting the entire length of the tree. So its live crown ratio is very poor. So that's why we approved this one. And then that's just a close-up of the main. I mean, it has an interesting union. I wouldn't say it's like prone to failing with this U shape, but the main reason is that like, it has no interior growth, and it just continues to struggle with anthracnose. And then the next tree is this, not this background tree, but this one in the foreground here. This one here in the foreground right here. I don't know if you can see it. But it's suppressed by this tree. It was vandalized in the past. It has this these sprout type growth that kind of establish as the main leaders, but they have very little canopy also. So we proved that for removal because it's a tree in pretty poor condition. And then the next tree is this one here in the foreground. It's missing like half its canopy. These trees are in pretty poor condition. They're not going to grow and put on a bunch of canopy. They're going to continue to struggle until there's a failure or until they die. And I say that that could be because of a failure because it has this sort of weird cantilever, and maybe one day this will break, and then it reduces the amount of photosynthetic material in this tree over time. And every single failure is another stressor for that tree that eventually causes its decline. Okay, and then the other tree is this one here, right here. And it's a pittosporum in slight decline. Like it has this we think we're not quite sure there's a disease that attacks a lot of these pittosporum. And we think it's like drought flood related, and maybe the project arborist might know what the disease is called, but we just see it in all these pittosporums. And this pittosporums also has the same decline that all the other pittosporums have. And I know there's a lot of question. There's probably a question of what about these trees in the back? This property is state property, so we don't have any jurisdiction over any of the trees behind the property line. And a lot of the trees being a lot of the trees that have been applied for in these narrow 6-foot sidewalks, so we can't approve their replacement. So yeah, it's a loss here. We don't have jurisdiction over it. We can't say whether or not they have to retain these trees within property. I just want to make sure that question gets answered because it probably will be a question. And then another tree that we approved for removal, it's the same tree. It's just, it doesn't have the best root structure. Like half of it's missing on this backside. So, and then it doesn't have very much interior canopy, although we don't have a good picture of it. It's more here. It's hard to see because there's other trees behind it, but its interior canopy is declining. And it has some like root decay here. And then this tree 7, it's a London plane in pretty poor condition here. It grows and then new growth dies back, and then it grows and new growth dies back. So it's just barely hanging on. So it's not really a tree worth retaining, unfortunately. It's not really growing a large canopy. Um, and then here's another view of it. It's just there's not really any upper canopy growth. It's not really meeting its potential. And then this other tree, this tree I think had so it had been vandalized and resprouted. So it's just also just hanging on. All these trees are really struggling here. It's a very difficult area to establish and grow trees. And here's another view of it. Like based on its diameter, it probably should have a canopy. I don't know if you can see my laser pointer this big, but it doesn't. And then the other tree, this tree has almost no canopy. And it's also an acacia, which is a species we don't really want planted in the sidewalks because they aren't really resilient to root pruning, so they have very short lifespans. And there's another view of it. It's in pretty poor condition, and if you did let these grow out, it would probably another really cantilevered, poorly attached limb. It would probably break. So those are the trees. We approve them because they're primarily in poor condition, and then because they're in poor condition, and they did not appraise for higher than the in lieu fee, and there will be trenching behind the trees. They're just not going to survive the construction. So, and this is an affordable housing project, so we couldn't really, if these trees were in better condition, we might be able to say like, what workarounds do you have for these trees, or appraise like higher values. And then, yeah, we don't have any jurisdiction over these property trees. So it is going to be a big loss of canopy once these private trees are removed, but we don't have any jurisdiction over it. So that concludes 700 Golden Gate and 750 Golden Gate.
Thank you, Susan. I believe we have quite a few people on this call to speak to this item number. I'm assuming they're the
Yes.
applicant.
Yes, we have 4 speakers.
Okay,
Yeah,
Um,
can we just make sure the applicants go first to present all of their information, and then the
Mhm.
comment, and then the public?
I agree.
Yes. Okay, I have them listed. First, we have Walter Levison.
Okay, Mr. Levinson, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak.
How do I share my screen?
Okay,
Uh-oh.
just one moment. If you want to share, I'm going to promote you to panelist, and you'll need to accept once it asks you.
All right.
When you come over, then unmute yourself again and you'll be able to go from there.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen. This is Walter Levison, Consulting Arborist, the project arborist on this project. Can everybody see this screen?
Not yet.
Okay, share, just looking for the share screen.
There should be a green button either at the top of your screen or at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Does this pop up now, my PDF?
Nothing
No.
yet.
If you let's see, worst case, if you need to email it, I can
Good
screen
thing.
share.
It's interesting.
My apologies. I do see a note here from Lauren asking if Lauren can go first. Is that okay?
Yeah, she can just share her screen and then I can go through the trees.
Okay, let me promote her as well. Just a moment.
Hi there. Can folks see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. My name's Lauren Fury. I'm the project manager with Mid-Penn Housing, who's developing the Golden Gate Avenue project. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of the project and a summary of our requests, and then hand it over to the other teammates to present on the reason for the request for the removals. I'll be handing it over to our civil engineer to talk about the tree utility conflicts, and then Walt to go through the tree health, as Susan previously presented on. And then finally, our landscape architect, Michael Vale, to talk about the new plantings being proposed. So as Susan talked about, it's a little bit of a complicated project. We're located at Golden Gate Avenue between Gough and Franklin Streets. We have 2 lots and 2 addresses because the site will be built, the project will be built in 2 phases. The site is currently owned by the State of California Department of General Services and will continue to be owned by the state throughout the project development and occupancy. Mid-Penn, as developer and owner, will enter a long-term ground lease with the state for this site. It was identified as surplus state land to be converted into affordable housing back in 2019 under an executive order by Governor Newsom. We're specifically talking about Golden Gate Phase 1 today, which is the first phase of a 2-phase development. And Phase 1 will have 74 apartments restricted to households making between 30 and 120% AMI, with a preference for San Francisco Unified School District and community college school district staff, as well as 1 manager's unit. And part of that preference comes from funding from the San Francisco Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. We also have the state of California through the Housing and Community Development Department as a funder. And then we also have 4% tax credits and bonds to construct this project. And our timeline is that we will be starting construction in December 2024 and leasing up in 2026. So here's the site locations, and then a view of the site, what it is today. This is the view of Golden Gate looking north. This is the view of Elm Street looking south. These are our renderings of what the project will look like after Phase 1 is complete. And so this is the Golden Gate Avenue view. And then when Phase 2 is complete, it will be built right next door at the intersection of Golden Gate and Franklin. And just a quick summary of our application is that we applied to remove 7 street trees. 3 of them conflict with utility services in addition to being in poor health. 3 of them are in poor health that we don't think they will survive construction. And 1 of the trees is currently dead on Elm Street. And then we're proposing 3 replacements as part of Phase 1, although it gets very complicated in the phasing of the project, but all of those replacements are proposed for Golden Gate Avenue. We are not able to plant on Elm Street due to the narrow sidewalk and ADA compliance. So I'm going to hand it over to our. Oh.
That was it. You have 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll hand it over to our civil engineer, and I can actually keep sharing. If Jim Fain is on and can speak, I can share his drawings.
Okay, just a moment.
Hi, this is Jim Fain.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jim Fain. I'm civil engineer with Carlisle Macy. I'm the project civil engineer. As Lauren explained, this is 2 parcels. We'll be talking about Phase 1. Just to give you lay of the land, the back of sidewalk is the property line for the project. Starting from the west or the left side of the screen, we're putting in an ADA ramp there, and then we're trenching electrical power to the project. As you can see, all the way from the west of the project going east to the last, there's a utility vault, Lauren, to the right there. So we're trenching all the way through there for power. And then going left to right, first we've got an ADA loading zone. That's to the, yeah, we have a ramp, and then behind that is a loading zone that must be clear for ADA accessibility. And then we've got a utility box, that H7 box right there. And then going left, we got a hydrant. And then a water service. And behind that water service is tree number 10 that we'll be removing for that water service. And then going right again, it's tree number, is it? I think that's 11, tree 11. That's our temporary power service for the building that will serve as power for the 2-year construction period. And then next to that is tree 14. And there is going to be a driveway access and cut that's going to serve the building and to be the entrance to the garage. That will be going through that area. And then just to the right of that is that utility vault, which is tree 15, that will be moved for the tree. The tree 15 will be removed for that utility vault. So we've got power running all the way from east to west through there, and then the various utility services and access, as I mentioned. I'm going to now pass it on to, I think it's Walter who will be speaking.
Thank you.
My share screen does not seem to function, but let me see if I can.
That's because I need to, oh, no, you should already.
I can continue sharing while I have your
Oh, okay.
report pulled up.
Oh, very good. If you could do that, that would be great. This is Walter Levison, consulting arborist again. 3 of the trees that were in poor condition, they do not follow a chronological order. The trees along Golden Gate from west to east are 6, 9, 10, 11, 14, and 15. The 3 that are in worst condition are 6, 9, and 14. 6 is an acacia, blackwood acacia. Small diameter, 2 main stems, very poor condition, 10% out of 100% possible. The current international ratings, 0 to 5% is considered dead. So a rating of 10% is almost dead. So this tree has a very limited useful lifespan, has sustained some vandalism damage, whereby main stems have been broken off between about 5 feet and 10 feet above grade. At the top of the image, above that, the main stems are actually broken off at roughly 10 feet above grade. So the tree has as I say, a very limited useful remaining life expectancy. Species is not considered, as Susan Aubrey was saying, not considered very valuable as far as species go. It is considered structurally prone to failures. If you could go to the next page, Lauren. The next tree moving eastward is tree number 9, Pittosporum undulatum. As Susan was saying, Pittosporum undulatum has been experiencing what might be referred to as a Victorian box decline, quote unquote. There was a UC Cooperative Extension scientific report put out some years ago, during which time they discussed how they had been studying the issue, I think at UC Davis and or other institutions. They haven't, I don't believe, determined exactly what's causing the decline, but this Victorian box species, Pittosporum undulatum, used to be a lot more valuable than it is today. Currently, the older specimens of this species tend to decline for unknown reasons. So they are now considered to be less valuable, less desirable in the landscape than they used to be in the old times. This particular specimen is another very small diameter specimen that was vandalized, and it has a 7% or very poor condition rating out of 100% possible. So almost dead. 5% is the maximum that is considered dead. So just two percentage points.
30 seconds.
So yeah, very limited lifespan. Next tree is tree 14. That is a couple more pages down. Another tree in very poor condition, 18% out of 100% possible, has a dog leg bend in the middle of it, which is not desirable structurally. Another Pittosporum undulatum, so the same species that experiences Victorian box decline. Also vandalism damage at various elevations. So also very limited useful lifespan.
That's your time. Thank you, Mr. Levison. And there was one more, Michael Vale.
This is Michael Vale. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Michael Vale, Formwork Landscape Architecture. I think between Susan and Lauren and Jim kind of outlining kind of the general prognosis of the site and the restrictions and what the site is up against, and then Walt's explanation of kind of some of the health limitations we have with the existing trees. What we've done here is we've added a little color to the exhibit that was prepared for staff's review. We've added little green boxes to the future tree wells, where the new tree wells will be going in front of phase one. Thought that might show up a little better, and it starts to show maybe some of the restrictions that Jim demonstrated earlier with the utility trenching. But in front of this phase one that we're looking at right now, there will be ultimately 3 trees in front of it. Susan mentioned there's going to be 2 going in as part of construction of phase one, and then as part of phase 2, this 3rd tree on the east side there will be going in, and we can kind of see an orange box there. That is going to be a temporary power service, which is keeping us from installing that tree as part of phase one. So I think what we're hopeful from, and I'm hopeful of as a landscape architect, is that now with this new development, now we can kind of give these trees, these new trees, kind of a healthy start, so that they don't meet the same fate as the ones that are currently out there. I know that Mid-Penn takes their projects very seriously, and they care for their projects, and so these trees, perhaps unlike the ones that are currently out there, will have ongoing care. We will be, if you pull back a little bit, Lauren, there will be some irrigation going to the dedicated irrigation going to all of these trees. They're going to be now installed with Public Works approved kind of backfill and installation details, and the tree species itself currently on the plans is the Frontier Elm, which is on the San Francisco approved street tree list. And so yeah, I think the next page, if you have it, Lauren, I think starts to show phase 2 a little bit, and I think Susan was starting to hint at that. And these are the 2 trees, the green, the darker green in the middle there. This starts to show it as a comprehensive kind of street frontage, and the 2 dark green tree wells we're seeing there. One will be going in as part of phase 2, and then the one on the left is that same tree we saw previously on phase 1. It'll be going in at the same time, and then the rest of the trees as we move around Golden Gate and Franklin are existing, currently targeted to remain. I think that's all I have for the minute.
Thank you. Was there one more person?
That should be all 4. I don't think there are any others that are representing the project.
Okay. So that was everyone who was with the applicant. Excellent. Are there any members of the public that want to speak on this item number? Order number?
Yes, we have three. Josh Clip, go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks, Therese. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, one of the reasons that trees struggle in this area is because they often aren't protected when they're planted. Just today, I drove by a tree recently planted by the city, a young magnolia, with every single one of its limbs ripped off and dangling because there was no protection put around that tree by the city when they planted it. On a practical note, I'm not sure what good a 20-foot planting requirement for new construction is if we're going to take out 7 and only plant 3, and that doesn't even count the trees inside the property line. I'm hearing lots of reasons why these trees should come out: tree health, construction, trenching, infrastructure, narrow sidewalks. As a member of the public, all I hear are the reasons to remove. What I don't hear is how we're going to balance the need for removal with the need to grow our urban canopy, especially for people who live in housing projects and people with disabilities, because poor people and people with disabilities deserve trees too. So how are we going to meet our climate action goals, let alone our city's environmental justice and equity goals, with this apparent lack of creativity, if all we're going to give is excuses on removal? I'm not saying those aren't legitimate, but where's the creativity? How about widening the sidewalk so you can replant? How about moving your vault inside your building like other developers do so you don't permanently remove yet another tree site? How about taking a walk around the neighborhood, a neighborhood that lives in one of the top tiers of our city's environmental justice framework, and commit to planting empty wells and replacing so many of the other dead or vandalized trees nearby? At the top of this meeting, I quoted our urban forest report noting that since 2017, we have net lost 1,236 trees. And that did not happen all at once. That happened one tree at a time, one project at a time, one removal at a time, just like we're doing today. This is a prime example of how we get to this place and how we will continue to fail if this is the best we can do. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you state your name? Was it Josh? Hello?
Yeah, yes, it was. It was
It
Josh
was.
Clip.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Please state your name. Next person.
My name is Joe Nolte. I have a couple of statements to make. First, on Golden Gate, the city has replaced the sewer lines there, tore up the street for 2 years. And now this entity is going to come along to the same location and then tear up the street again and the sidewalk when they do finish this project. So why couldn't they coordinate with the city? So really, that's a one-way street. Both are one-way streets there, Golden Gate and Franklin. And so I have a problem with not coordinating with the city, coming along and then tearing up the new street that was just put in. And then we got the trees. We have multiple trees inside the line, outside the line, outside the onto the sidewalk. And again, apparently the state doesn't want to admit to its pure not taking care of its parking lot and or the trees around those that parking lot. So and also having another building next to it for why there's a parking lot. So not taking care of their trees, having to have a parking lot, that means that they pay money to the city for that parking lot to the police department, and therefore that entity that runs that parking lot is not taking care of the trees. This is again what happens to parking lots in San Francisco when an entity comes along, gets a permit to run a parking lot for the city, and therefore it does not take care of the trees around that parking lots. So I find this very multiple departments involved that are not taking care of street trees in San Francisco. And these are prime examples of what happened to this location because there's nobody there. They don't take care of the security there. They don't have security. That parking lot probably is not open 24 hours. They choose not to have it open, and they don't take care of their property. So why should we be so generous and get rid of all these trees that are probably the ones specifically inside the line were worth probably thousands of dollars, and they are just not, they're off the table for just because it's the state. I find this very generous to the public, and I don't want to rebuttal to it because you have nothing really to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. And the next appellant ready?
Hi, my name is Michael Nolte, and I have issues because of the fact that can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, please, we can hear you.
Yes, I happen to have an address at Opera Plaza, which is adjacent building to this location. And I'm not sure how long the construction's going to be, and then how you're going to minimize the dust and how you're going to minimize the environmental factors. Plus the fact that it's clear to me that there's no you're doing the minimal. I mean, it's not even minimal amount of adding to the community after the fact, when you're gonna, will claim that one phase will be done, and the amount of environmental adding to the community will occur. Um, I don't hear really any greenery. Really, all I'll hear is reasons why not to have any greenery, and I would also, I think, which has been mentioned, that any trees being put in to this downtown area or civic center area should have protection for a minimum of 3 years, if not longer, around the tree. Not just assume because it's going to have some girth to it. It needs to be a wide girth base on the trees for them to survive the area. And it also amazes me how this is a tree hearing and the trees are discussed at the end after of the presentation. This is about the trees and not about the project, even though it's always interesting to hear about the projects. But as a member of the public and also a neighbor, I would have preferred hearing about the trees, so that because that's what the purpose of this hearing is. So, and then I also, because this is considered surplus plus land from the state, you know, it's the taxpayers are going to be flipping this bill. So I think that's all I need to say.
30 seconds. Okay.
I've sort of discussed it as a neighbor that this is not going to improve the quality of the neighborhood as far as greenery.
Thank you. I see no other hands, Ms. Najib.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? You said you saw no other hands.
No.
Okay,
No other hands.
okay, excellent. Thank you. So that was order number 210854 for 700 Golden Gate. So if anyone joins later who didn't get a chance to speak on this, we will allow it. Closing that order number out, moving on to order number 210855 to consider the removal of one street tree without replacement. No in lieu of fee. Tree is adjacent to 3625 Balboa Street. Staff approved the removal and the public has protested. Public Works Representative, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes. Okay, yes, so the staff member approved this without replacement and no in lieu fee. So the reason for removal is because of this parklet here. And the fire department and SFMTA requires this 3-foot setback between the edge of any furnishings, including the parking meter that'll get moved, and the edge of the parklet in order to access the building for any emergencies. So they're being required also to modify the parklet. So everything is going to come in, and then this whole parklet is going to come in, and then this parking meter and this smaller tree will be removed, or the application is to remove this tree. And then this one, the application also included this, but we denied it because there's room to create that 3-foot setback without removing this tree, and it is larger. My understanding is the reason for the lack of Inlufi is because of the density of the planting of these Dracaena, and that they're also planted initially as landscape shrubs that it wasn't intended that they become street trees, but the species that was planted ended up becoming a very upright street tree shape and size, but they don't really provide the same benefits as street trees. They're a monocot, so they're related to grasses. So they have probably like this one in particular probably has like 10% of the carbon sequestration abilities of, like, for example, a Brisbane box. And there'll still be 2 other of these Dracaena palms. So we did go back and forth with them and just say, like, well, what other modifications can you do? And the parklet isn't here anymore, but basically, like, this is where it is, where this car is. And so they need this, and this like 3 foot of land. So this this little tuft is what the palm used to be. It was intended to be landscaping and not a tree, but it grew into a tree, and now we're here with a removal application because of it. And so this landscaping also has to be paved over to provide the accessible entrance to the parklet platform and this building. So we think this will have like the least impact with the landscape removal and the trees, to just do this one edge, as opposed to any other configuration would remove like a larger tree or more landscaping. Let's see, and then removing the parking meter also helps with that. So the 3-foot setbacks are required to ensure that there is clearance for emergency responders, like I said earlier. And also if there's a car parked in front of the parklet, that there's enough room to get onto the sidewalk here in between the parklet and the parking spot, so that the car isn't just backed up right against the parklet, the way you see cars typically backed up against each other in these parking spots. So this is this is a diagram of what the 3-foot setback looks like. This is a clear furnishing zone of 3 feet, where the parking meter is 3 feet from the edge of the parklet, and then this tree is also 3 feet away from that parking meter. So it's clear and accessible here for the for emergency responders. And then below on the right-hand corner is the diagram of what the shared space is supposed to be. This is a little what the inspector quickly marked up and said, like, well, if you have the 3-foot setback starting here, you minimize the amount of landscaping that gets removed, and then you don't need to remove this one. So that's why the inspector approved the removal of this tree, and then they determined that this didn't qualify for the in lieu fee. Yeah, I don't think that was it was a determination that took a little bit of debating, but effectively, this is not replaceable anyway because it lacks the spacing between this tree here, and it was never really meant to be planted as a street tree, but now it is. So that's the parklet. That's our presentation on it.
Thank you, Susan. Is the applicant on the call? This is a chance for the applicant to speak. No one has their hand raised. Okay, last call for the applicant. Any members of the public available who'd like to speak on this item number? 3625 Balboa Street.
Good evening. My name is John Nolte. Apparently, looking at this street, those trees were planted several years ago as a series down Balboa, and now you've got parklets on both on to the west side of Balboa. Anyway, on the other side of Balboa, and so you have a series of parklets here, and now all of a sudden, 3 years later, you want to take out trees because an inspector sees one tree problem with one of the things. So the question is, how many more parklets are in front of the restaurants or establishments there still there? And also, is there other issues with those two? Because you have the same issues with one. Why not the others? Since you all have the same issues of the trees that are or the plantings. Now you're saying there are trees were planted there, and you have parklets going further down the street. So and also I believe also across the street too, if I'm not correct. So now and you have Balboa Theater across the street. So this is a major thoroughfare. Having a parking lot, and also the weirdness that you've done with the parallel and on one side. Again, this is DPW playing around with parking. One side, let me finish. Parking is one side is one direction, and then parallel on the other side. Again, this does not help the Richmond and its commercial corridor. And also the landmark theater of Balboa Theater across the street. So you are harming a lot of things here, and you're saying ADA for this side, but what about the other side? And also there's a school next block down. So what's really going on here? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nolte. Susan, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to respond at once to everyone and not individually. Does that work for you, or do you want to
If a
respond?
question is asked and clarification is needed by you or the constituent, I'm happy to but otherwise we can just take the public comment.
Okay, I got you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nolte. Thank you, Susan. Are there any other members of the public who want to address this item?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
This is Josh.
I do.
Yeah, I really do not understand why we are removing a tree permanently with no replacement, no in lieu fee for a temporary parklet. That's a temporary structure. Unlike the tree, that parklet is not connected to the ground. A few years ago, it was a parking space. And in another few years, it could be a parking space again. There's no guarantee this parklet is always going to be there. And it's unconscionable that we're talking about the permanent loss of a tree with zero compensation to the public for a temporary structure that benefits only the business in front of it. When it comes to ADA access, I know a fair amount about that because I'm a certified access specialist through the California Division of the State Architect. I'm one of a couple thousand people in this entire state qualified to evaluate accessibility in the built environment. And yes, parklets are required to be accessible to people with disabilities. Unfortunately, I see inaccessible parklets all over the city with no trees in front of them whatsoever, and they've been like that since they were installed. But the city didn't seem to care about that when those parklets were built. But here we're willing to sacrifice a tree permanently, and the city doesn't have that, I'll call it a spine, to assess an in lieu fee, because whether it's replaceable or not, whether it's a dense planting or not, whether it's a palm or not, this is a tree that was counted in our tree census. So that means, on the record, this is public property, and it ought to be treated that way consistently, including replacement and in lieu. But before we even get there, the city needs to seriously question approving a tree removal for a temporary structure and instead look at whether the temporary structure itself can be moved a foot or two to the left, a foot or two to the right, rather than permanently killing and removing a tree with no replacement and no in lieu. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate that. Are there any more comments from the public for this item number?
Yes, Michael Nolte here. I think the basic comment here is, or theme here, by the public is that, a temporary, structure, should be should be modified. Two, the tree is a permanent fixture, for the neighborhood, not for one commercial space or whoever's, doing the applicant, is the applicant. Three, then if there's so many problems with this, parklet, deny the application. Very simple. Deny the application. And, if you are gonna start taking away trees, and then not replace them or not provide any compensation to the public, then again, deny the application. And, if I find out that this tree is removed for that, and there's no, then, I will notify the nearest, community, benefit groups, and, we'll have to work something else out for the community, because, obviously the applicant needs to be working with the neighborhood and not, only thinking about their benefit.
Right on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Is there anyone else? Anyone else who wants to comment on hearing order number 210855 for 3625 Balboa Street, going once? Okay. We are going to close out that item. Next up and last on our agenda for this evening is hearing order number 210856 to consider the removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 42 Clipper Street. The staff denied the removal and the applicant has appealed. Public Works, you ready for your presentation?
Yes, sorry, and here, sorry about this typo where we said we approved the removal. We didn't, we denied the removal and the applicant appealed.
Oh, did I say it? Did I
No,
say approved?
you said
I
it
said
correctly.
denied.
We wrote
Okay.
it incorrectly in our presentation has typos in it.
Okay.
Yes.
For the
So,
record, it's denied
yes.
and the applicant has appealed. Thank you.
Yes, you were correct. So 42 Clipper Street, we have the permit number 796-381. The permit applicant is just the property owner. They are doing a net addition of 500 square feet, so they would trigger our tree planting code. They do trigger our tree planting code, and they get credit for this tree if they retain it. And the reason for removal is they want to replace it and they believe it's in the way of the construction project. I'm personally, we've seen a lot of 500 square foot additions, so we're not convinced it's fully in the way, as in build a brand new building, or it would just be nice for it to not be in the way because it would just be more convenient. And so the inspector in 2019 thought that at the time the tree lacked vigor. It probably was stressed from those branch failures. But then our newer inspector who came after him noted that the tree didn't have tree protection. It now does. And then determined that the tree had appeared to have recovered, probably because it has a larger diameter, so it had a lot more of those starches to tap into and recover. And So this is the tree now. It has a lot fuller canopy than it did in 2019. I mean, it does have, it doesn't have good structure. But it also only has one kind of main limb with this sort of interesting structure, and it could be reduced up here, this canopy, to reduce the weight on of the canopy on this limb. I don't think it can be replanted, and that's kind of where we are with this tree. It's not the greatest tree, but if you removed it, there's a very good chance it cannot be replaced. And it's because the water line is really close to it here. So it does have these interesting unions here. This tree protection doesn't look like this anymore. It's been improved. So this is the union on the right. It lost this main leader. And the tree was pretty stressed for a while because of it, but you can see here it's a larger diameter tree. So larger diameter trees, while not ideal, they're more likely to be able to recover from this kind of failure. So this is what it looked like in 2019, and it wasn't great. Normally I would say like, this is kind of a failure risk here, and this is a failure risk here. But then it did grow, and it actually looks like it put on some structural wood at the unions here. So I do think it should still be reduced because of this past failure here. Like this limb, I'm not entirely certain it's attached very strongly, but given that it's a very upright leader and it has a good live crown ratio, this mass damping happens up and down this canopy here, so it doesn't create like a cantilever the way a tree that has a lean or like a lateral branch, and it can't be replaced. Like it's a little trickier when it can't be replaced because we do want to approve trees that are not like they may be structurally unsound. In this case, it doesn't quite cross that threshold. It can be reduced a little bit, and it can't be replaced. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a photo. But basically, right to the right of it, there's a water line that's really close, and then to the left of it, there's a curb cut here. So it's tricky trying to replace it, and we have all this canopy now. So the idea of approving at this time, we can come look at it in the future and say like, oh, it's declined or it looks less structurally sound. We're happy to do that, but we're not ready to approve this tree for removal at this time. And that concludes 42 Clipper and our reasons for denial. There's a little copy of that denial letter for anybody who's interested. Think we might have lost a DC.
Yes, she's coming back in. It just disconnected for a moment. But she's back in.
Hi, I'm here. I had to be promoted to panelist
Okay.
again to
Yeah,
speak. I
yeah.
apologize. I only missed about 30 seconds of your speech. I'll go back and listen to it. Thank you so much, Susan, for your presentation. We appreciate it. Okay, so that concludes your Public Works presentation. And is the applicant here for 42 Clipper Street?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean-Luc Duprat. I'm the owner of the house in front of which the tree is. We've been in that house for about 12 years. And I want to clarify that we want to replace the tree. We do not want to remove the tree and leave this empty. During the tree is a silk oak. It's an interesting tree. It's never done particularly well, and it rarely flowers. But more importantly, it really suffered in the last drought. The tree became very brittle. A number of branches fell on cars and people. And I'm aware of two insurance claims for cars that were parked under the tree. One of them was my car. The other one was the neighbor across the street. We had the tree was pruned multiple times in that period. It ended up not being balanced very well, as we've seen in some of the pictures. And we became quite concerned about safety. A branch fell on me while I was coming out of the car. The branch was not big, but it was not small either. And if it had, it could have hurt someone. So we were quite concerned about the tree. We contacted the Department of Urban Forestry, and in I think we contacted them in early 2019, and an inspector came out and recognized that the tree was unsafe, and the tree was slated for removal in 2020. And then the pandemic happened, and the world got complicated, and the tree was not removed. Since then, it has recovered some, but we're still concerned about the tree because it's not particularly structurally sound. We're still concerned that it's going to be very brittle with drought, and we're concerned about the safety of our neighbors. The reason for doing the tree replacement now is because of the construction. If we had to move the water line, or if we had to redo the sidewalk around the tree, now is the time to do it while all this construction is going on. But our intent is definitely to replace the tree and nurture the new tree, make sure that it's going to grow healthy in the new space.
Thank you, Mr. Dupont. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do we have any members of the public who want to address this item number? I don't see any raised hands.
Yes, we just got one. We have one raised
Okay.
hand.
Hey, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Josh. So I saw in the notes presented by the department that there were failures in 2019, which means that it has since survived the massive winter storms of both 2022 and 2023. I saw the note about the 2024 protection, which, as a member of the public, says to me that the contractor doesn't really care whether this tree makes it or not, and had to be told by the city to protect it during construction. And despite the property owner stating that they want to replace it, the department is saying that as a practical matter, you can't. It cannot be replaced. This is a removal without replacement. So it doesn't matter. It's nice that the property owner wants to do that, but it won't happen because it cannot happen. And despite the claims that make it sound like this tree is just dropping missiles all over this neighborhood, the city's letter says it's fine. Specifically, the tree is healthy and sustainable, appears to have rebounded from previous damage. So, and says, call us in the future if this changes. So I would encourage the city to stand by that, because if we approve this, that'll make half a dozen trees without replacement from this single hearing alone. And this particular one is on the larger side, and it's even greater loss. The public relies on our Department of Public Works and our Bureau of Urban Forestry to stand up for these trees that don't need to be removed. And I encourage the department to do that here for all the reasons that they have stated, and also other reasons that I've stated in other agenda items and in my general public comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josh, for your comments. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? Members of the public?
There's a raised hand, just a moment.
Okay.
One, this is Michael Nolte. One, appreciate the property owner actually being at the hearing. A lot of times, we see, tree removals and we don't hear from, as members of the public, we don't hear, all the details from everybody that's concerned. And that's the purpose of the hearing, is to flush out the details and issues so that the hearing officer, as well as the public, can understand and appreciate that why that we do have tree hearings. As far as this particular project, I think the previous speaker, of the member of the public who has looked at a lot of the details, made very good points. It's clear that if the department is not able to replace the tree in its current location, even though the property owner is willing to do so, then is the property owner willing to find an adjacent location to put a tree, which obviously I doubt he would want to, because it won't be to his benefit or to his property's benefit. So we're at a kind of a standstill here. So since the department has denied it, that's, I guess, what we have to go with. So thank you very much for bringing this up on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment on this item?
No other hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Waiters, so we have heard quite a few orders this evening. Is there anyone that joined late that wanted to comment and didn't get a chance to speak? So I think we've heard from everyone.
I believe that's everyone. I don't have any other messages or any other hands raised.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Susan from our Bureau of Urban Forestry. Thank you, Ms. Cerise Waiters, our clerk for the evening. And thank all of you who took the time out this evening to leave your comments and share your concerns and make your presentations on behalf of your requests. Speaking of the developer. If that is all, then everyone have a great evening, and I'm closing out the case tonight, Public Works. My name is Dadisi Najib. I was your hearing officer for tonight. No more comments. I'm closing this hearing. Thank you. This hearing is now closed.